Before we begin, if you believe the most brutal wars are not fought with weapons, but in silence, inside the chambers of the human heart, then subscribe to this channel. This is where we speak the truths people rehearse in their minds, but never dare to confess. Stories about longing that hides behind responsibility. About marriages that look perfect in photos but echo at night. About temptation that doesn't crash through the front door. It slips in quietly, wearing familiarity. If you've ever stood at the edge of a decision that could fracture everything you built. If you've ever felt invisible while standing in the center of your own life. If you've ever wondered how good people cross lines they once swore they never would, then stay. This story is for you. I used to believe betrayal belonged to other people. Not villains. Not monsters. Just people who were reckless. Careless. Broken in ways I wasn't. I was disciplined. Loyal. Rational. At 39 years old, I had built a life that, from the outside, looked like a quiet success story. A husband with a stable career. 2 children who still called for me when they woke from nightmares. A house that stayed organized because I kept it that way. A calendar filled with appointments, school reminders, grocery lists, dentist visits, birthday parties, parent-teacher meetings. I was the structural beam of the house. The scheduler. The memory keeper. The steady one. My husband worked long hours. He always had. In the early years of our marriage, I admired that about him. I wore his ambition like a medal. When friends complained about their partners being directionless, I felt grateful. He's building our future, I would say. His late nights meant stability. His exhaustion meant security. His sacrifices meant college funds, retirement plans, vacations we promised ourselves we'd take one day. But somewhere between mortgage payments and science fair projects, something subtle shifted. Security slowly replaced connection. We didn't argue. We didn't scream. We didn't slam doors. We became polite. And politeness can be more dangerous than conflict. Conflict means you still care enough to fight. Politeness can mean you've stopped reaching. We evolved into efficient roommates. We divided tasks like business partners. He handled finances. I managed everything else. At night, I would lie beside him and stare at the ceiling fan as it turned in slow, hypnotic circles. I would sometimes reach for his hand in the dark. Most nights, he shifted unconsciously away. Not intentionally. Not cruelly. Just absent. I told myself this was maturity. This is what long-term marriage becomes, I thought. Predictable. Stable. Quiet. Passion fades. Excitement softens. Intensity dissolves into routine. This is adulthood. So I swallowed my loneliness the way responsible women do. Silently. I buried it under folded laundry and packed lunches. I pressed it down between errands and obligations. I convinced myself that wanting more connection was selfish. Until he arrived. He was 26. The son of a family friend who needed temporary work, while deciding what to do with his life. He was hired to help renovate our garage, something my husband had been planning for years, but never had time to start. The first day he showed up, I barely registered him. He was polite, soft-spoken, focused. I was too busy. My days ran on structure. Morning routines, school drop-offs, grocery lists, emails, cleaning schedules. He was background noise. At least at first. But attention is a powerful thing. And he paid attention. He asked how my day was, and then actually waited for an answer. That sounds small. It isn't. He noticed when I looked tired. He carried heavy boxes without being asked. He fixed a cabinet hinge that had been loose for months. He remembered that I preferred my coffee with 1 sugar, not 2. Details. Tiny things. Things my husband used to notice. The first time our eyes held a second too long, I dismissed it. The second time, I felt something flicker. The third time I understood. It wasn't about his age. It wasn't about excitement. It wasn't even about attraction, at least not at first. It was about being seen. And I hadn't realized how invisible I had felt until someone looked at me like I still existed beyond my responsibilities. Temptation rarely announces itself dramatically. It doesn't storm in declaring destruction. It arrives disguised as warmth. It creeps in through ordinary afternoons. A brush of hands in a narrow hallway. Standing slightly too close while passing a tool. Conversations that last just a little longer than necessary. One evening, I found him in the garage sorting through boxes. My husband had fallen asleep on the couch, the television still murmuring in the background. The house was dim and heavy with quiet. I stepped into the doorway. I don't remember what I intended to say. I only remember the stillness in the air between us. "You don't have to watch me work," he said gently. "I'm not," I lied. He studied me in a way that made my pulse stutter. "You always look like you're holding your breath," he said. And something inside me cracked. Because he was right. I had been holding my breath for years. Holding in disappointment. Holding in loneliness. Holding in the version of myself that used to laugh easily. I should have left. That was the moment to leave. Instead, I stayed. That was the first real mistake. The day everything shifted from tension to action, it was raining. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just a steady gray rainfall that pressed against the windows and made the house feel smaller. I was in the kitchen alone. Or I thought I was. The back door opened softly. My heart reacted before my mind could. "I told you to stay away," I said without turning around. "I tried," he replied. There are moments in life when you feel two futures pulling at you simultaneously. One safe, predictable, controlled. The other reckless, electric, dangerous. He stepped closer. "Tell me to leave," he said quietly. And I couldn't. Not because I didn't understand the consequences, but because in that moment, I felt awake for the first time in years. We didn't speak about love. We didn't speak about forever. We spoke through silence, through proximity, through a shared understanding that we were crossing something sacred. And once crossed, it cannot be uncrossed. When it ended, reality returned like cold water. The rain, the kitchen tiles, the hum of the refrigerator, the weight of what we had done. He left. I stood there long after the door closed, gripping the counter as if the floor might disappear beneath me. I hadn't just betrayed my husband. I had betrayed the woman I believed I was. Guilt is strange. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. I made dinner that night. I laughed at the right moments. I handed my husband the salt with steady hands. But inside everything had shifted. He began texting. Small messages. "I can't stop thinking about you. I've never felt this way before. You deserve more." I tore the notes up. But not before reading them twice. Every knock at the door startled me. Every phone notification sent adrenaline through my veins. I tried to bury it under routine. I cleaned obsessively. Reorganized cabinets. Scrubbed tile grout until my fingers ached. But longing doesn't disappear because you mop the floor. It waits. My husband began watching me differently. Not accusing. Observing. Suspicion doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like silence. Then one afternoon, my daughter found one of the torn notes in the trash. "Who wrote this?" she asked. Her voice was innocent. My pulse thundered in my ears. "It's nothing," I said too quickly. Children sense tension like changes in weather. She didn't push. But I saw doubt in her eyes. And that hurt more than any confrontation would have. Days passed. He stopped coming to work. The garage renovation remained unfinished. The house felt emptier. And I hated myself for noticing. A week later, I heard his voice near the front door. He was speaking to my husband. My breath locked in my chest. I stepped into the hallway just as my husband handed him a check. "Don't come around anymore," my husband said calmly. Polite. Controlled. Final. Our eyes met for only a second. In his eyes, I saw regret. In my husband's, I saw something worse. Distance. People think temptation is about desire. It isn't. It's about hunger. Hunger to feel wanted. Hunger to feel alive. Hunger to feel visible. I could blame loneliness. I could blame routine. I could blame emotional neglect. But the truth is simpler. I made a choice. And choices carry weight. The affair didn't explode dramatically. There was no shattered glass. No screaming. No confession. Just a shift. My husband grew more guarded. My daughter watched me more closely. And I began avoiding my own reflection. Trust, once cracked, doesn't always make noise. It simply changes shape. We still live in the same house. We still share meals. But something invisible sits between us now. A quiet knowing. A fracture beneath the surface. Late at night, when the house is still, I ask myself a question I never imagined I would face. Was that brief moment of feeling alive worth the slow erosion of everything stable? Temptation gave me intensity, but consequences gave me clarity. I learned that loneliness inside marriage is dangerous when left unspoken. I learned that silence builds walls higher than arguments ever could. And I learned that crossing a line doesn't just change the relationship you betray. It changes you. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever stood too close to something you knew could burn you, ask yourself this. Are you chasing another person? Or are you chasing the version of yourself you've lost? Because sometimes the solution isn't stepping outside your marriage. It's confronting the silence inside it. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak before you break. If this story made you uncomfortable, good. Growth rarely feels gentle. Subscribe. Because the hardest truths are the ones we live quietly. And sometimes hearing them out loud is the first step toward not repeating them.